Welcome to Nice and Blunt. I'm Adam Riancho, and it's Saturday, week 5. Time for the injury report. We're going to go through every single team, tell you who's in, who's out, and after all of this information, give you my final rankings for week 5. So let us begin with the positive news, the healthy rosters in the NFL. Not too many remaining. If you have any Buffalo Bills, Cincinnati Bengals, Denver Broncos, Detroit Lions, New England Patriots, Philadelphia Eagles, or Seattle Seahawks, those teams are healthy on offense. You can start those players with confidence. In Arizona, first team on the slate, Trey Benson is on IR. Ranked him earlier in the week with that knee injury. He is out for at least 4 weeks on the IR. So perhaps he returns in week 9. For now, it looks like Michael Carter and Emari Demercado are getting the upgrade. So I believe it's more of a 60-40, 55-45 split. It's going to be close to an even committee, at least in week 1. And if I had to guess, I think Michael Carter is more of an early down running back, and Demercado will mix in all throughout the game, but is mainly there for 2-minute drill and third down. I think it's going to be an even split. Hopefully one player emerges, but if I had to stake my claim on just one, I think I prefer Michael Carter at this point in time, but not by a lot. Not that much different between the two. With James Conner on IR, there is a lot of opportunity in this backfield. I think Kyler Murray will run the ball a little bit extra because of this, so I do upgrade Kyler a little bit without Trey Benson. However, Greg Dortch, backup wide receiver, is questionable with a collarbone injury, limited to all we can practice, a game time decision. I think he'll play, but if he doesn't, maybe Michael Wilson gets an extra target or two. Not enough to move the needle, but I do want to mention Greg Dortch may not play. In Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, the quarterback, is out for 2 to 3 weeks, and they have a bye in week 7. So maybe he's ready next week, but I really doubt it. I can't envision that. I expect him back in week 8 after the bye. I don't think he'll play this week or next against the Rams. So Cooper Rush is the starting quarterback. Mark Andrews maybe gets some more targets. Zay Flowers is a bad matchup. They probably pass the ball a little bit more, but they also probably hand it off to Derrick Henry a little bit more as well. Somewhere like 7-8 scrambles from Lamar turn into passes and rush attempts. So all in all, it's kind of even. I still think the Ravens offense is pretty good, but the Texans defense probably gets an upgrade. That's a tough matchup this week against the Texans. In Carolina, starting running back Chuba Hubbard is out, meaning Rico Dowdle and Trevor Etienne will take his place. Rico, I think, is going to be the main workhorse. Etienne will mix in basically with Rico's job, and I do think Rico Dowdle's a very safe start. He was pretty effective last year in Dallas as the starter, and I would expect him to factor in not just in the run game, but also the passing game. I think around 4 or 5 targets is not insane to project for Rico. Chuba was getting roughly 4 per game as well. So like that for Rico Dowdle. When it comes to Chuba, will he return soon? I really don't know. The timeline is rather uncertain. He's dealing with a calf injury and did not practice at all this week. Last week he did play through it, so it's definitely moving in the wrong direction. Maybe he'll return in week 6. We don't know. For now, Rico has legitimate RB2 value, a very safe play in week 5. The Panthers tight end Jatavion Sanders is out with a high ankle sprain for the 2nd week in a row. So Tommy Tremble took his place last week and he had 8 targets in week 4. It's a very good matchup against the Dolphins. It ranks top 3 on the season. They've given up some touchdowns as well. I think Tommy Tremble's a very legit plug and play. My favorite streamer off the waiver wire this week. And Jalen Coker will remain on IR. He's missed the first 4 games with a quad injury. However, it sounds like they will open his practice window next week. He's not going to be available, but I think he'll start practicing and probably come back to the field in the next week or 2. So until then, Xavier Legette, healthy this week, will get some more reps. Maybe he does score a touchdown. The Dolphins have given up quite a few wide receiver touchdowns this season, but I don't think I would start Xavier Legette. In Cincinnati, they are healthy, but wanted to bring it up. Joe Burrow is on IR, but Noah Fant did clear concussion protocol. He is active, gets a good matchup against Detroit. Cleveland is without Cedric Tillman. They placed him on IR with a hamstring injury, so Isaiah Bond will take his place. Judy might get an extra target or 2, but because Dylan Gabriel is getting the start, I really don't trust a Browns receiver. It's a bad matchup against the Vikings this week, and I don't want to press my luck. Need to see it in Cleveland to know what you're going to get with Gabriel. In Dallas, CeeDee Lamb is out for yet another game. Expect him out one more week, maybe even two. And then Kavontae Turpin, one of the backup receivers, is out. He did contribute last week. He's going to be dealing with a foot injury, didn't practice all week at all, and that means Jalen Tolbert will run a few extra routes. Maybe Jalen Tolbert does step in. If George Pickens is limited at all by Sauce Gardner, then Jalen Tolbert and Jake Ferguson do benefit. In the backfield, Miles Sanders is questionable, not expected to play with a knee and ankle injury, did not practice all week long. So the backup, Jaden Blue, who's been a healthy scratch all season, will play, but will he factor in much? Not expecting a big role. Even Sanders wasn't really that involved too much behind Javonte Williams. So I would trust Javonte, not going to trust Jaden Blue, but we'll see. The player does have a lot of speed and is a good pass catcher. He might factor in if Javonte goes down mid-game. In Houston, Joe Mixon is out with that foot injury, and it's the 4-week PUP window closing right now, so there was a chance that maybe they'd activate him or at least let him start practicing. According to reports, there is no update at all. They are non-committal on his availability this season. So Woody Marks will be the guy this week. Even Nick Chubb is going to be relegated behind Woody Marks. I like Woody Marks a lot this week. In Indianapolis, receiver Alec Pierce, who missed last week with a concussion, has been ruled out yet again. He did practice in full on Wednesday and Thursday, but then on Friday suffered a setback and is yet to fully clear the concussion protocol. So that is not good news for him. It means Josh Downs and A.D. Mitchell may get a few more targets. Pierce was averaging roughly 5 targets a game before going down with the concussion. So that is relevant, but in general, you're not really starting a second Colts receiver. If it's not Michael Pittman or Tyler Warren, it's hard to trust anyone other than the quarterback and running back. No receivers gain my confidence. Maybe A.D. Mitchell gets another shot, but after the fumble last week, I would only trust Josh Downs as top 50 options at the position. Michael Pittman, though, was dealing with a hamstring injury earlier in the week. He was full Wednesday, limited Thursday, but then full on Friday again. So he's cleared to play. He's good to go. Michael Pittman will be active. I think he's a top 20 play this week for the Colts. In Jacksonville, running back Bhayshul Tuten, questionable with a shoulder injury, limited Thursday and Friday. And then on Saturday, he was full in practice. So no injury concern for him. Bhayshul Tuten will suit up. Dyami Brown, the wide receiver in Jacksonville, did not play last week with a shoulder injury, and on Saturday in practice, he was upgraded to full. So he is active. He's good to go. He will play in week 5. If you were counting on Travis Hunter, probably not as safe of a bet with Dyami Brown active this week against the Chiefs. In Kansas City, Rashee Rice is still suspended, another 2 weeks without him. The Chargers backfield, Najee Harris is on IR, but tight end Will Dissly is questionable. He didn't play the last 2 games, and he's been upgraded to full in practice on Friday. So he's still a game time decision, but I expect him to suit up. That means Oronde Gadsden is no longer viable as a low-end tight end streamer. Not expecting anyone to trust Gadsden with Will Dissly coming back. In Las Vegas, both tight ends are questionable for this game. When it comes to Michael Mayer, he's dealing with a concussion, and it does not sound very good. Limited all week in practice. He needs to clear before kickoff, and he is a game-time call. I would say it's 50-50. I do not know if Michael Mayer will suit up. But the main question is if Brock Bowers will suit up, and it sounds like Pete Carroll is expecting him to play. Even though Brock Bowers was limited Wednesday, didn't practice at all on Thursday or Friday, Pete Carroll is saying that was just maintenance, and they're assuming he will be good to go on Sunday. It sounds like he is all right to play. He's been playing through this knee injury since week 1, and it sounds like it's not going to hold him out. So if you do have Brock Bowers, I would start him. I don't know if the backup Michael Mayer will be available, so you may need another backup plan if he is deemed inactive, but I expect Bowers on the field. Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker would get an upgrade if he doesn't play, however, and Geno Smith would be a lot less trustworthy if Bowers is inactive, but it sounds like Bowers will suit up. In Miami, Tyreek Hill placed on IR, so Wandale, Darren Waller, Devon Achane, and maybe Malik Washington need to step up. We're going to see what the new target share looks like for the Dolphins. And in Minnesota, as expected, J.J. McCarthy is out. Aaron Jones remains on IR, but maybe Aaron Jones will return in week 7. They have a bye in week 6, and he's been on IR since week 2. I don't know when Aaron Jones will come back. As of now, there is no clear timeline on his return. So Carson Wentz gets the start. Not going to trust him against the Browns. And then Jordan Mason, Xavier Scott will fill in for Aaron Jones. In New Orleans, Juwan Johnson, the tight end, is questionable with an ankle injury, and he did not practice Wednesday, but was limited on Thursday and Friday. So I am expecting him to play. He is a game time call, but I assume he'll be good to go. And interestingly, they are getting backup tight ends healthier behind him. We do have Taysom Hill, who has been practicing in limited capacity all week long. He's been on the PUP list, and he is in the final stages of his recovery from that knee injury. Before I recorded this, he was deemed active off the PUP list, so he's questionable to play, and it sounds like he will make his season debut. He will be a factor in the Saints backfield rest of season. Taysom Hill, actually a sneaky pickup, but I'd like to see it before I actually grab him off the waiver wire. He might be way more expensive on Wednesday. However, if you really want to stash him, he may do nothing. It's his first game off the ACL injury. I'm not expecting the world from Taysom Hill, but he is very relevant. Don't pretend like Taysom hasn't had legit value in the past. They're also activating Juwan Johnson off the PUP list, so he's questionable as well, limited all week in practice, just like Taysom Hill. I'm expecting Foster Moreau to be active in this game. Both of the PUP tight ends have been activated and probably going to suit up behind Juwan Johnson. In the Giants offense, in this same game, Tyrone Tracy is doubtful as expected with that shoulder injury. He didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday, but on Friday he did practice in limited capacity, and it's possible he does play next week. But he's not active in this game, so Cam Skattebo maintains his major upgrade. Very good matchup for Skattebo. I love this matchup against the Saints. So Skattebo's a must start. Malik Neighbors was placed on IR, so Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton, we'll see what the target share looks like for them. They get an upgrade in this matchup. In the Jets offense, Braelon Allen, the backup running back, was placed on IR with a knee injury, and it sounds serious. The timeline is 8 to 12 weeks before he is eligible to return. So maybe in week 12 he'll be back. If not, it'll be even later into the fantasy playoffs, as late as week 16. And that means Isaiah Davis will get an upgrade behind Breece Hall. He will have some vulture potential in this backfield. But in general, Justin Fields kind of caps the upside. Breece Hall gets a slight bump only because Braelon Allen has vultured him this season. But in general, I don't see that much changing for Breece. Only Isaiah Davis getting like 2 or 3 more touches per game. In Philadelphia, tight end Dallas Goedert has been deemed active. Did not practice Wednesday, limited Thursday, and then in full on Friday. He's been upgrading all week. He is good to go. That knee injury is not going to hold him back. So he's been fantastic when active this season. Against the Broncos, I do think Goedert is a top 10 play in week 5. In Tampa Bay, some major injury updates for Bucky Irving. Out. Did not practice at all this week with a foot and shoulder injury, and it's not quite sure how long he will miss. Maybe it's just 1 week, maybe it's more, but in his absence, Rachaad White becomes a must start. Rachaad has had top 15 value before they drafted Bucky. I think that returns to him, and Sean Tucker will factor in as well. Tucker doesn't catch as many passes though, so Rachaad could get like 6 or 7 targets in this game. I think Rachaad is a must start if you have Rachaad White. Mike Evans also out, did not practice at all this week. So last year, he also dealt with a hamstring injury, missed 3 games. At this moment, we do not know when Evans will return. I would expect him to miss at least 1 more game. Maybe he'll return in week 7. But Baker was limited in practice on Wednesday. On Thursday and Friday, though, he was full. He is good to go. Egbuka, Godwin, and Otten get a slight upgrade without Mike Evans or Bucky Irving. In Tennessee, Calvin Ridley is a game time decision. He's questionable with a knee and elbow injury and did not practice Wednesday or Thursday, but was limited on Friday. He's 30 years old, and last week his snap share was limited just a little bit. He is a true 50-50 call, game time decision. If you are counting on Calvin Ridley, I think you may need a backup plan. I'm not totally sure if Ridley will suit up. He's been bad all season, so you kind of have to be desperate to start him. If he doesn't, Elik Ayamanor might be a safer play, but it's also a rough matchup against Will Johnson, the rookie cornerback in Arizona. Not an ideal spot. So if Ridley is inactive, then Cam Ward also loses value, but maybe the backup running back Tyjae Spears is coming to the rescue. He was activated off the PUP list today, and he is expected to suit up, questionable for week 5. He was limited all week in practice. I do believe he will suit up, and he's a legit pass catcher, so I do think he'll factor in a decent amount. It's more of a committee with him and Pollard if he's on the field. So Pollard definitely loses value, more of a low-end flex play with Tyjae coming back. I'm expecting Spears to factor in and maybe steal the job as the weeks go by. I did have some high hopes for Tyjae back in the summer before his ankle sprain. Lastly, in Washington, Jaden Daniels, the quarterback, is active. He's missed the last 2 games, and he was full in practice all week long. So he will suit up against the Chargers. He will be without Terry McLaurin, however, who is out with a quad injury, didn't play last week and did not practice at all in week 5. So he's not going to suit up. We've seen Luke McCaffrey step up with his absence. I also think Zach Ertz gets a big upgrade. But interestingly, Deebo Samuel will play in this game. He didn't practice at all on Wednesday or Thursday with a heel injury, but then on Friday, he was full in practice. So maybe they were just playing it safe given Terry's not available, but it sounds like Deebo's good to go. Deebo gets an upgrade without Terry on the field, and Jaden coming back, I would definitely trust Deebo to probably score a touchdown and probably have like 10 opportunities between targets and rush attempts in this Charger game. Love Deebo this week. Noah Brown is also going to miss this game again. He is dealing with a groin injury, and it's his 3rd game missed in a row. So I do think Luke McCaffrey has some relevance behind Deebo Samuel, but mainly if I'm upgrading anyone, it would be Zach Ertz in the passing game. There are 4 teams on bye who are all dealing with some injuries as well. I want to update you on Darnell Mooney, who is questionable with a hamstring injury, had a 3rd quarter exit in week 4, and according to reports, he is expected to be okay and return in week 6. So maybe if you're counting on Mooney, he won't play against Buffalo, but it sounds like they were just being cautious. And with the bye, just wanted to give him extra rest. He was dealing with a shoulder injury earlier in the season, and that might factor in as well. So Mooney, not 100%, but sounds like he'll be back next week. And then in Chicago, tight end Colston Loveland was out in week 4 with a hip injury, but he is expected to return in week 6. If he doesn't, Cole Kmet might have some value. In Green Bay, Christian Watson, who's been on the PUP list, is expected to return to practice starting on Monday. On Monday, they are assumed to open his 21-day window coming off the PUP, and that means he could return as early as week 6 or as late as week 9. He's expecting to be back this season, and that does really crowd up that receiving core in Green Bay, because right now Jaden Reed is on IR, expecting a return in week 10 most likely, and that means once they're both back on the field, how much do you really trust Dobbs and Matthew Golden? Even Dontavian Wicks factors in a little bit. So it will be a 5-man receiving core in Green Bay when both players come back. It may be as soon as week 6 when we see Christian Watson. Lastly, in Pittsburgh, Jaylen Warren missed week 4, and it sounds like he is going to be all right. Even though they held him out in London, if it was a playoff game, the swelling in his leg would have not held him out. So it sounds like he's going to be all right. It sounds like he'll play in week 6. If you're rostering Kenny Gainwell, he still has handcuff appeal, but I'm not expecting Gainwell to be the starter in week 6. They also have Calvin Austin questionable with a shoulder injury, and they ran some x-rays. They got some good news. It looks like it is not too serious for Calvin Austin, but his status is uncertain for week 6. It's possible that Roman Wilson will get the snaps in his absence. And that's it for the teams on bye. There's also the Rams, who had Tyler Higbee out. We'll see if he's back in week 6. And then some updates on San Francisco. Brock Purdy is out with that toe injury, and he's deemed week to week. According to Kyle Shanahan, his status for week 6 is pretty uncertain. There is really no timeline for him to return, and I would expect Mac Jones to be the starter in week 6. Brock Purdy, not fully healthy. When it comes to the receivers, Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings, there is no update if they will be back in week 6. So we might see Kendrick Bourne have a shit ton of volume again. And then tight end George Kittle has been on IR since week 1. According to reports with that hamstring injury, he is a long shot to be available in week 6. They're a lot more optimistic, however, that he is back in week 7. So don't expect Kittle next week, but 2 weeks from now, I think he'll be back on the field. Brandon Ayuk, not expected to be back until as early as week 8. Week 6 is very unrealistic for Brandon Ayuk. They were optimistic earlier in the season that that's when he would come back. So that is it for all of the offensive playmakers in fantasy football, whether or not they are active or inactive going into Sunday, week 5. But I also want to bring up some offensive line injuries that I think are very relevant. In Dallas, they are without 2 offensive linemen already deemed out. They're starting left tackle and right guard, and then their starting left guard is also questionable, not 100% to play. So 2 of their backup offensive linemen are also on IR. The Cowboys are kind of reeling on the O-line. I actually think the Jets have some legit chances to upset Dallas. I am downgrading Javonte Williams. With 3 missing offensive linemen, I would have some concerns on Javonte's efficiency. In Minnesota, they're also dealing with the same situation. Their left guard, their center, and their starting right tackle, 3 starters on the O-line, have already been ruled out for this game. So they're pretty depleted. I think Jordan Mason is actually a very big gamble against an elite run defense like the Browns. The Browns are very tough to run against, and they're probably going to get extra sacks on Carson Wentz. I have some low expectations for the Vikings offense without 3 starting O-linemen. The Chargers are without left tackle Joe Alt, who is replacing left tackle Rashawn Slater on IR, so not good for them. But on the positive side, it looks like right guard Mekhi Becton is probably going to suit up. He was questionable, didn't play last week with a concussion, and on Friday, he was upgraded to full in practice. They removed the non-contact jersey. I expect Becton to suit up. That is positive news for Omarion Hampton. In New Orleans, their right guard is out. Their left guard is questionable, so maybe they're not as efficient on the ground. In Baltimore, left tackle Ronnie Stanley is questionable. In Detroit, left tackle Taylor Decker is questionable. And then in Cleveland, right tackle Jack Conklin is also questionable. When it comes to some secondaries in the league, Arizona is getting healthier. Cornerback Will Johnson and Max Melton are both questionable, but that is an upgrade from earlier this season. I expect both of them to play, especially Will Johnson. That is not an easy matchup for the Titans. If Ridley is healthy, that's not a good spot to trust Ridley. In Baltimore, they're without safety Kyle Hamilton. He's questionable. I'm not expecting him to suit up. And then cornerback Marlon Humphrey and Chidobe Awuzie have both been ruled out already. So maybe Hamilton suits up. I don't know for a fact. In Seattle, cornerback Devon Witherspoon and free safety Julian Love, both of them have been ruled out. So maybe Egbuka and Godwin catch a break, but not that much. There's still Reek Woolen to worry about. And then in Tampa Bay, cornerback Jamel Dean has been ruled out. So maybe JSN is going to play better. In Cleveland, cornerback Greg Newsome is questionable. Maybe Jordan Addison does catch a break if Newsome is not available. Lastly, though, when it comes to defensive linemen and linebackers, there are a few that have been ruled out as well. In Arizona, defensive end Darius Robinson is out. In Baltimore, linebacker Roquan Smith is also out. In Buffalo, defensive tackle Ed Oliver and linebacker Matt Milano are both questionable. They've missed the last 2-3 games, and I'm expecting both of them to suit up. They were limited in practice all week long. In Minnesota, linebacker Andrew Van Ginkel is out yet again. And in New Orleans, linebacker Clavon Chason is out as well. In New Orleans, linebacker Chase Young is also out. And lastly, in Seattle, linebacker DeMarcus Lawrence is ruled out for this game. So those are all of the offensive line and defensive injuries. With that out of the way, let's update some of these rankings. There have been a lot of changes at running back. I removed Bucky Irving from the top 10, so everybody behind him moves up 1 spot. And I feel very confident in Cam Scatterboot, Omarion Hampton, Ashton Genty, Quinshon Judkins. However, I did downgrade Javonte Williams. Javonte moves down 4 spots because it looks like 2, if not 3, of his offensive linemen are not going to play this week. So not going to be as efficient. The Jets have a pretty good defensive line. When they get going, it could be a problem. And it's definitely not an upgrade. So some other players move up 2 spots above them. I did bump up Saquon and Judkins. I think it's a little safer of a bet. And Javonte moves down. So that's the main difference, but they're still in the top 15. I would still start all of them, and I would still start them above Rachaad White. Rachaad does move up 19 spots with Bucky Irving coming out of the mix. I think he's a lock in the lineup. If you have Rachaad, he is a top 15 option. Going to catch a lot of passes with no Bucky Irving. So a very good play with Rachaad White. And with Chuba Hubbard going down outside the top 15, I did upgrade Rico Dowdle 25 spots. I previously had him at number 42. I think he's a much safer play. And I had Chuba Hubbard right behind Woody Marks originally, but that was assuming Chuba would be splitting the backfield with Rico Dowdle. Dowdle has less of a committee with Trevor Etienne, so I think he's a bit safer than Woody Marks. Just a few extra touches will go in his favor. So Rico Dowdle at RB17, I think you should be starting Mr. Dowdle, and I'd rather start him than Woody Marks and anyone behind Woody in the ranks. Outside the top 20, there are very few changes though. Overall, it's just a little bit of pessimism on Tony Pollard. He moves down 1 spot overall because Tyjae is factoring in. I'd rather go with Kamara and Kendry Miller than Tony Pollard, but I did take out Trey Benson from this tier. So that's why Pollard moves down 2 spots overall, but only 1 in the rankings behind the Saints running backs. And then I feel a little bit more confident in Chase Brown, but not because I like Chase Brown more, but because I feel less confident in Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason is really not a safe play with those injuries on the offensive line. The matchup against Cleveland has been a bottom 3 matchup, an extremely difficult spot to be in against the Browns. Look at David Montgomery last week. If you're not catching passes, the Browns can definitely shut you down. And without a touchdown, I don't see much upside for Mason. So not excited. However, with some players being taken out, he does stay put. Chase Brown, though, does jump him in the rankings. Chase Brown also jumps RJ Harvey. Harvey's a little bit hard to trust. Despite his breakout last week, the Eagles are still a good matchup, and J.K. Dobbins is not going anywhere. I'd like to see it one more time from R.J. Harvey, but I'd rather go Harvey than Michael Carter. Here is where Carter enters in. At running back 29, he is outside of my flex consideration. I just don't know exactly what the touch split will be between him and Amari DiMercado, and I'd rather go Carter, but not by a mile. I have him 1 tier above, but it's still a little bit too much of a committee for me to feel very safe about it. And in the top 30, you could definitely start him and have some value there, but he's pretty touchdown dependent against Tennessee. I do not know what will happen. If you told me Kyler vultures both running backs this week, wouldn't be that surprised. I think Kyler does scramble and run the ball a little bit more without Trey Benson. So not dying to start Carter, but you could do a lot worse. I'd rather go Carter than either Chiefs running back or guys like Ramondre, Nick Chubb, and JCM. But I did upgrade Tyjae Spears by 20 spots, previously unranked, now at running back 35. And I do think he's in this same tier as Michael Carter. There's a chance he does factor in a lot more than expected, but without a touchdown, I don't think you go over 10 points. Pretty hard to trust, especially given we've never seen him play alongside Cam Ward. So he's the last player in this tier, but right behind it, I do have Amari DiMercado moving up 4 spots overall, and maybe he's going to be more involved than I expect, but I think it's more in favor of Michael Carter on early down. So if I had to predict one to find the end zone, I would bet on Carter, but I don't know for a fact. It's really a toss-up what the touch split will be between Carter and DiMercado. Good luck knowing what to make of it. I'd rather not start either. Cardinals backup running back. I did downgrade Charbonnet 2 spots just because other players are moving up. And then Isaiah Davis, I think I did rank too low in the Jets backfield. The Cowboys are pretty bad on defense, so Isaiah Davis, maybe some vulture appeal. I bumped him up 10 spots. And I also upgraded Brashard Smith 10 spots as well. I think Brashard is actually pretty interesting. If you told me Brashard overtakes Pacheco and Kareem Hunt in the next week or two, I wouldn't be that surprised. His role has been increasing steadily week over week. It could happen where this week the guy to own is Brashard Smith. If he scores a touchdown, then it's pretty much for sure he's the guy you want moving forward. Beyond that, though, no one I think is cracking your lineup. I did rank Trevor Etienne at 44, but not high enough to start. That's the last player I'll mention in the updated running back rankings. At wide receiver, I didn't make too many changes, but I actually shuffled around a lot of pieces in my top 12 rankings. I bumped up JSN 2 spots overall because on Thursday I did downgrade Davante Adams, and I'm also downgrading Justin Jefferson 2 spots. With the injuries on the offensive line, I think Carson Wentz is going to get sacked a few more times, and that means some of those targets that would have gone to Jefferson are just going to not turn into passes at all. I think some of those plays will fall apart, and they're just not going to be as efficient on offense with a bad offensive line. I'm still going to start Justin Jefferson, but I'd rather go Nico Collins while the injuries in Baltimore. I think he's a very safe play. And then JSN with extra rest and Jamel Dean out for the Bucks, I do think is a safer play as well. So I'd rather go JSN and Nico above Justin Jefferson, but I'd still start all of them. And then I also upgraded Deebo Samuel 4 spots because Terry McLaurin is out. When I ranked receiver, I did think Terry still had a shot to play. Deebo will suit up. He is a safer bet, a top 10 receiver this week in my opinion. With no Terry, feels like a touchdown is pretty much guaranteed. So I bumped him up 4 spots. And with Deebo moving up, QJ and Keenan Allen did move down 1 spot in the Chargers offense, but I did remove Terry McLaurin from the rankings, so there are some players that move up in the flex territory, but I didn't really feel the need to show it on the screen because in general, my opinion doesn't change on any player. Everyone I ranked earlier is basically in the same spot until we go down outside the top 40, where I did upgrade Jalen Tolbert by 4 spots overall. With no Kavontae Turpin, I can't say I'm dying to start Tolbert, but Pickens doesn't have the best matchup, so maybe Tolbert does step up. He had 6 targets last week, and Turpin opens up about 5 plays per game that would normally go to him. So maybe they all go to Tolbert, maybe they go to Jake Ferguson, but I do think Tolbert's a little more interesting as a desperation flex play at number 46. Right behind Tolbert, I'm bumping up Luke McCaffrey, who will get extra snaps this week with Terry inactive. We saw that in the last 2 games where Noah Brown was also inactive. Luke McCaffrey was kind of decent, and that was with Mariota. He actually has a very high upside with Jaden Daniels. So he enters the top 50, but not quite sure if I would start him. Feels a little bit too risky, but I still think he deserves some consideration if you're in a desperate situation. There are 4 teams on bye and a lot of injuries at the position. You could do worse than Luke McCaffrey. I also upgraded Josh Downs by 8 spots. I previously had Alec Pierce in this range, so Pierce is out with a concussion. I think Downs does occupy that role in the offense, so maybe a few more targets for Downs. A good matchup against Las Vegas, so maybe he has a breakout game this season. And then Isaiah Bond, I did downgrade 8 spots overall, just because we've never really seen anything from him, and I also have no idea what to expect from Dylan Gabriel. So if I was going to bet on a Browns receiver this week, it would be Jerry Jeudy. I don't think they're in the same category. I previously had Bond back-to-back with Jeudy. I think that was just a little too optimistic. Let's see what he can actually do before you start him. So he moves down 8 spots. 40 was just too high in the ranks. And then lastly, I also upgraded Dyami Brown by 9 spots overall. He was unranked, so outside the top 60 at wide receiver 52. There's a chance he's actually more valuable than Travis Hunter. If he's going to play, Hunter feels a little bit less safe, but I have him 13 spots behind Travis Hunter. If I was starting a second Jags receiver this week, I think it would be Travis Hunter, but don't feel great about it. Can't be too excited. The Jags passing game has left a lot to be desired this season. At quarterback, I only made 1 change overall, and it was swapping Bo Nix and Dak Prescott. Given the offensive line injuries, maybe Dak gets a few more sacks just like Carson Wentz. And I think Bo Nix is probably a bit safer given Nix does scramble and run around a little bit more. So still in the same tier, I would still start Dak Prescott if I had him, unless I also had Bo Nix. That was a very close call between the two, and I'm going to give Bo Nix the tiebreaker because of the injuries to the Cowboys offensive line. Otherwise, at tight end, I did make quite a few changes in the starting territory. I bumped up Tyler Warren 2 spots overall. I had a bit of a mix-up when I was looking at his stats. I didn't notice he did score a touchdown last week, so with that factoring in, I feel a bit more confident. I'd still rather go Zach Ertz. I feel really safe with Ertz this week, but I did think I ranked Tyler Warren a little too low 2 spots overall. So he moves up. I also think Brock Bowers with some more safety to start this week is a better play. I bumped him up 2 spots, but he's not in the top 2 tier anymore. Dealing with that knee injury, he's still a lock in the lineup, but at number 5, he is not the guaranteed tight end 1 like I've been previously ranking him up until this point. So with Pete Carroll saying he's expected to play, I feel a bit safer trusting him in the lineup, and he does jump Kincaid and Hunter Henry. I also swapped Kincaid and Henry. When we looked at those matchup stats for tight ends, the Bills have been really good at stopping the position. So Kincaid, I think, is a better play against Henry. I expect a shootout, though. I think both of them find the end zone. I'd be starting both tight ends in Sunday night. The matchup between the Bills and Patriots should have a lot of points on the scoreboard. I also upgraded Mark Andrews by 1 spot overall. He's good to go. There is no injury designation. Meanwhile, Juwan Johnson is questionable, not a lock to play. And with Taysom Hill and Foster Moreau entering the equation, I do think Andrews is slightly safer in the Ravens offense. So I did swap the 2 of them. Andrews moves up to tight end number 9 this week. We'll see if Cooper Rush does keep him viable. And then lastly, in the streaming conversation, I feel a bit safer knowing what I'm going to get from Tommy Tremble than Cade Otton. Tremble at least had a very good game last week. Otton has not had any production this season. So even though I love the matchup for Otton, I also love it for Tremble. And given the safer floor, I'd rather start Tommy Tremble off the wire than Cade Otton. I think I just had them in the wrong order. A swap of those 2 players in the top 15. I think they're very legit options off the wire in week 5. So that's it for all of my updated rankings. I didn't change anything at defense. So here on the screen are my top 20 quarterbacks, tight ends, and defenses. If you need to pause it to make those lineup decisions, I'll leave it up on the screen for a few more seconds. But now that that's out of the way, here are my flex rankings, the updated flex ranks. And in general, all the changes I made at receiver only affect the top 10, and I was already telling you to start all those players already. So keep them in the lineup. It's just minute changes for like DFS purposes. And then the only other changes are outside the top 40. So doesn't move the needle. Maybe Jalen Tolbert, though, is a bit more appealing in Dallas. But at running back, we made a lot of changes overall. We took out Bucky Irving. We felt a little less safe on Travis Etienne and Javonte Williams. So they moved down the rankings. And then Rachaad White and Rico Dowdle enter the top 20. I think they're must starts if you had them on the bench. And then outside the top 20, I lost some faith in Jordan Mason and Tony Pollard. We have Kamara and Kendre Miller moving up slightly and Chase Brown moving up just a little bit. But Michael Carter does enter the top 30 with no Trey Benson. Him going on IR opens the door for Michael Carter. But Tyjae Spears enters the top 35, previously unranked. We'll see what he can do. And then outside the top 35, it's pretty irrelevant. I wouldn't start anyone beyond that point. So that's it for this video. If you enjoyed, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. I will be going live in the morning. We're going to do some daily fantasy drafts on Underdog and answer some questions. I'll try and wake up early. I'll answer all the comments before I go live, and somewhere around 9 a.m. Pacific time, about an hour before kickoff, I'll be live on YouTube tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. Ring the notification bell if you don't want to miss out. But I wish you luck. I hope everyone gets a dub. I'll see you on Monday with the win-loss picks. My name's Adam Riancho. Thank you for watching. Nice and blunt.